Hey kids, Pat here. Doing something a little bit different today. What we have here is a ceramic bracelet that my sister bought in England. And what happened was she slipped it off of her wrist, it flew out of her hand, and then it broke into several pieces. So she asked if I could take a look at it and take a look at possibly repairing it. And normally what I would do if this were something like a coffee mug, I would just use super glue and just stick the pieces together as quickly as I can. The problem is that gives you no setup time really. Once super glue is adhered, it's stuck, it's instant, there's no setup time or working time. And these pieces are a little bit tricky in terms of the way they're shaped and the way they're curved. So what I'm going to try to use is this product, Gorilla Glue Epoxy. It's a syringe that has two reservoirs. One has the resin and one has the hardener. You mix it together in a small tray. I have these little hobby toothpicks that I'll be using to mix it and apply it together. And then we'll be applying it to the product. And this says it sets in 5 minutes. So hopefully that'll give me a little bit of working time. Oh, now I have another one. A little bit of working time in which to set the individual pieces and make sure that they're all set up the way I want them. And then I just have a piece of foam here to allow the piece to dry on. I don't just want to put it down on any surface where it might get stuck to the surface and then give me a bigger problem on my hands. So, the instructions say make sure that the surfaces you're bonding are clean. These surfaces are so small that they really don't have any kind of there's really not enough surface for these pieces to get really any kind of dirty. I wonder if I have this upside down. So yeah, I'm just doing a dry fit now, just to see how these pieces line up. Okay, and it looks like that's the way it goes. There's a little sliver here. I'm not sure where that goes, but I'll take a look at that when we do the final assembly. The nice thing about the epoxy also is that it will fill in cracks and holes. So if you do have missing pieces, you can fill it in with the epoxy resin. Some folks on the internet, you'll see them go through additional steps of sanding and polishing, to get that epoxy smooth and level with the rest of the item. I'm hoping these glue points are small enough where I won't have to take that on as a task, because I kind of like this item just the way it is. All I'd really be doing is just adding a little bit more distressing, and that would be pretty much it. Alright, so let's get started. What they say to do with this item is snap out this black plastic applicator tip. and then use that to eventually cap off the individual nozzle heads, so you can use this product again. Once again, that would be nice is, you know, as opposed to super glue, where once you use a tube, it hardens almost the entire tube, or at least the nozzle part instantaneously, and you can't use it again. Hopefully, if we're able to keep the resin and the hardener separate, we'll be able to use this tube over and over again. So let's snap off this applicator tip. Okay. Let's put a little of the mixture in one of our molds here. Okay, let's put our cap back on. And let's get to mixing. You know, it didn't actually come out in an even flow. There was a lot more of one side than there was of the other. So I'm not sure if that's because, you know, it was purposely designed that way, or, you know, just because of the first use. One nozzle, you know, had some air in it, but it looks like it's setting up pretty nice. It's a, you know, it's a pretty thick, viscous liquid now. And let's get some of our toothpicks and start the application process. Now the first two pieces I'm going to glue together are one of the long segments and this short segment. Time for the glasses. And then I'm just going to go down the seam in both pieces. Hold them together. Okay, I'm wondering if this mix isn't right because there's just no adhesion going on at all here. So let's give it another dab. And then what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to set it down and give it the full 5 minutes that the box tells me to give it, and come back and see, you know, if that joint is any stronger. So I'm going to stop the recording for a second. Well, it'll be a second for you, but it'll be 5 minutes for me, and let's see what it looks like after that. Okay, so we're back. It's been about 10 minutes. And I'm just going to check maybe as gingerly as I can to see if this piece actually held, and it looks like it did. So I'm going to pour myself another reservoir and try and get the whole loop closed as nicely as I can, and then set aside to dry. Oh yeah, no, this set up pretty nicely. So I am going to have to pour myself another little reservoir here because what I had actually dried up. So hopefully not too much. That should be sufficient. And let's get that cap back on there. Once again, this will be nice if I am able to reuse it. I will use a fresh toothpick, however, because I have a lot of those. And here we go, mixing it up. They say to mix it up for about 20 seconds. It does change color a little bit. it kind of turns to a slightly translucent white. It does dry completely clear though, you can barely see it in either the reservoir or on the bracelet. And you'll have to forgive my phone going off there. So like I said, I want to close this loop, and this is where this epoxy resin is really going to come in nicely, because I will have some playtime to get these items lined up the way they need to be. Get my glasses again. So we're going to apply some resin once again on both sides. And I'm being fairly liberal. Once again, I don't care too much if some of the resin spills out, because it will dry clear. And I guess that's why so many people, sand and polish their epoxy, because if it does squeeze out of the joints, it's far more noticeable on some pieces if you're using like a colored epoxy as opposed to a clear epoxy when it dries. And yeah, this is a joy, just having this extra work time with the piece, so you can just make sure everything's lined up as nicely as you can get it. There's one side that's done really nicely, I think. And then the other side also done pretty nicely. So yeah, I'm just going to let this sit, and then I don't know if you can see it. I'm probably jinxing myself, but there is the spot where that little sliver came out of. So I am also, since I have it, I'm going to try and replace that also, but I'm going to wait until these main pieces kind of firm up a little before I go ahead and do that. And here is that little sliver piece. I may have to use a pair of tweezers to get that in there once I glue it up. But let's get this another 5-minute rest, and then we'll come back and finish it up. Okay, it's been 10 minutes in the real world, a fraction of a second in YouTube land. And here is our bracelet. Oh, it's stuck to the foam a little bit. And as I pointed out earlier, we do have a sliver where we need to insert this little wedge piece. And what I'm noticing is some of the epoxy kind of oozed out. So I may actually just be able to wedge this in there. I believe so. Now I'm a little bit worried about this piece because that because that wedged out epoxy hardened, you know, it's wedged in there pretty good. Like it's smooth. Like I don't want my sister to cut herself when she goes to put this on. So probably what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover this little portion that juts out with a little bit of extra epoxy just to smooth it out. And then, yeah, we're going to set it aside and let it dry overnight. Let's get a tiny little sliver of this mixed up again. Okay, get that cap back on. Get this mixed up. And it's such a small amount, I don't think we're going to have to do too much mixing. And once again, I'm going to get my glasses on. And so just around this sliver that's sticking out a little bit, I'm just going to kind of paste it over just to smooth out that area where I wasn't able to get it to sit flush because the other epoxy had, oh, and here's a piece of the, you know, this has like a aluminum, like a silver foil on it, and it looks like by where that crack was, the silver foil started to come off. So here it is, the repaired ceramic bracelet. I'm going to let this dry overnight and see where we are with it. The only thing I might do is I did get some epoxy in places where I didn't want it. So I'm not going to sand it or anything like that. What I may do is just run over it with, you know, with a buffing wheel on my Dremel tool, just to see, you know, if it sticks. But I really want to let it completely dry before I do anything like that. Most likely it'll be fine and it'll be good to go, and it will give my sister years upon years of wearing pleasure from this point forward. Once again, just as an overview, I am a big fan, a big convert to using epoxy resin over super glue. Love the fact that it gives you that working time, and it's easier to work with in general. And I like the fact that it will dry up in the tube and become useless, where, you know, I can just use a whole tube over and over again. And, you know, once it does dry and harden, it's a pretty, you know, it's as strong as super glue would be. You just have to, at this point, have a little bit of patience with it. Don't touch it. The box says for 12 hours. I'm going to give it 24. I'm not going to touch it again until tomorrow night, when I may go ahead and clean it, but I probably won't even bother doing that. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe and do all that YouTube stuff. Honestly, I'm still trying to figure all that stuff out. I don't really know what I'm doing on YouTube yet. But more videos are coming along shortly. Thanks a lot.